A veteran and his dog inherited his late wife's mansion, but her family fought back. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into the story. John stood on the front porch of the mansion, his fingers gripping the wrought iron railing as he stared at the towering house that had once been filled with laughter, love, and the presence of his late wife, Emily. She had been the light of his life, a guiding star in the darkness of his post-war struggles. Now, standing alone with his loyal German shepherd, Duke, by his side, the mansion felt like a distant memory. It had been 6 months since her passing, and the pain of her absence still gnawed at his heart. Emily had left him this mansion, a gift of love and trust, but now it seemed like the weight of her family's disapproval was too much to bear. As the wind howled through the trees, John's mind drifted back to the day he received the will. Emily had always spoken fondly of the mansion, a place where she had grown up and where she had hoped to raise a family with John. But her family, her father and her 2 brothers, had always considered John an outsider. They had never approved of their relationship, and now, with Emily gone, they had come to claim what they believed was theirs. John had always thought of them as cold and distant, and he had never expected them to come after the mansion. But now, as they filed the legal papers, demanding that John vacate the property, the reality of their intentions became clear. They had no intention of honoring Emily's wishes. They wanted the mansion for themselves. Duke, sensing the tension, let out a low growl, his amber eyes fixed on the shadows in the distance. John reached down and patted his dog's head, a silent gesture of reassurance. "We'll get through this," he whispered to Duke. "We always do." As John turned to go inside, the heavy oak door creaked open, and he stepped into the foyer, where the familiar scent of wood and old books greeted him. It was the same scent Emily had loved so much, and the memories flooded back in waves. The house seemed to breathe, as if it too mourned her loss. John walked through the hallway, his footsteps echoing in the stillness, the weight of the mansion's silence pressing down on him. He paused in front of a large portrait of Emily that hung above the fireplace. Her bright smile seemed to mock him now, a reminder of everything he had lost. But he knew he couldn't give up. Not yet. Not after everything they had been through together. As he stood there, the doorbell rang, and John's heart sank. He knew who it was before he even answered. The family was here, and they were coming to fight. John stood there, the heavy oak door still creaking from his movement, as the sound of footsteps on the gravel path outside grew louder. He could hear them approaching. Her family, the ones who had always disapproved of his relationship with Emily. He could hear their voices now, the sharp tones of her father and the cold, calculating tone of her brothers. John took a deep breath and steadied himself. Duke, sensing his unease, stood beside him, his large frame providing an unexpected comfort. "We've been through worse, boy," John muttered. The doorbell rang again, and this time, it was not the wind playing tricks. It was real. They had arrived. John slowly walked toward the door, his heart pounding in his chest. He hesitated just for a moment, glancing over at the portrait of Emily that hung on the wall. Her smile still lingered in the room, and he could almost hear her voice whispering to him, urging him to stand his ground. He opened the door, and there they were. Thomas, Emily's father, standing tall and imposing, his gray hair combed neatly, and his arms crossed in front of him. Behind him were her 2 brothers, Daniel and Michael, both with the same cold, calculating expressions that had haunted John's memories since his first meeting with them. "John," Thomas said, his voice as harsh as ever, "I'm surprised you're still here. We've been patient, but enough is enough." John didn't flinch. "I'm not going anywhere," he said firmly. "This house was left to me, and I intend to stay." "Don't be foolish," Daniel chimed in, his voice dripping with disdain. "You have no business here. This mansion belongs to our family, and we've made it clear from the beginning that we won't allow a stranger to take what's rightfully ours." "Emily left me this house," John replied, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "She wanted me to have it. And what makes you think Emily's wishes matter now?" Michael's voice was cutting. "She's gone. We're the ones who have been here all along, who have supported her, who have given her everything. You've always been an outsider, and you always will be. John's fists clenched at his sides. He could feel the anger rising in him, but he knew he had to keep his composure. I loved her, he said quietly. She loved me. This is my home now. Duke let out a low growl, his amber eyes locked on Emily's family, sensing the hostility in the air. John reached down and placed a hand on his dog's head, the comforting warmth of Duke's fur grounding him. Thomas took a step forward, his expression hardening. If you want to fight for this house, fine, he said. But be warned, we won't back down. We'll do whatever it takes to make sure this mansion stays in the family. John stood his ground, meeting Thomas's gaze without flinching. I'll fight for it, he said, his voice resolute. And I won't let you take what Emily left me. The tension in the air was thick, and for a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the wind howling outside, as if the house itself was holding its breath. After what felt like an eternity, Thomas finally spoke again. We'll see about that, he said, his voice laced with threat. He turned and motioned for his sons to follow him. You'll regret this, John, he added over his shoulder. We'll be back. As they walked away, John closed the door behind him with a firm click, the sound echoing in the quiet house. He leaned against it for a moment, his breath heavy, trying to steady his nerves. This isn't over, he muttered to himself. He turned to Duke, who was still standing by his side, watching him with steady eyes. We have to find a way to prove that this house is mine, John said. For Emily, and for us. Duke's tail thumped softly against the floor, as if in agreement. John knew that the battle had just begun, but he was determined not to lose. Not now, not ever. John spent the next few days in a haze of stress and uncertainty, trying to keep the mansion together, both physically and emotionally. The battle with Emily's family had only just begun, but already he could feel the weight of their threats pressing down on him. As he walked through the mansion, he found himself lingering in places he once shared with Emily. The kitchen, where she used to make her famous apple pies. The living room, where they spent countless evenings curled up by the fire, talking about their hopes and dreams. Every corner seemed to hold a memory, and yet, the house felt colder than ever before. Duke, his loyal German shepherd, remained by his side, sensing his unease and offering the silent comfort only a dog could provide. The days seemed to drag on, with no clear solution in sight. Emily's family had promised to return, and John knew they wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. It was a fight John wasn't ready for, but it was a fight he knew he had to face. One afternoon, as John was cleaning out the attic, a place he hadn't ventured into since Emily's passing, Duke suddenly barked, startling him. John turned to see the dog standing near a dusty old trunk in the corner of the room. His tail was stiff, his body tense. Duke was fixated on something hidden beneath a pile of old blankets and boxes. John approached cautiously, curiosity piqued. As he pulled back the blankets, he uncovered an old wooden chest, its surface worn with age. It looked like it hadn't been opened in decades. John's heart skipped a beat. Could this be something Emily had kept hidden? Something important? With trembling hands, he opened the chest. Inside, he found a collection of letters, some yellowed with age, others still in surprisingly good condition. They were all addressed to Emily, but the handwriting was unfamiliar. John sifted through them, one by one, until he came across a letter sealed with wax. Breaking the seal, he unfolded the paper carefully. The letter was written by Emily's mother, who had passed away. Years ago, it spoke of a hidden family trust, one that had been kept secret for generations. The letter revealed that the mansion, along with a vast fortune, had been intended for Emily's descendants, but only if they could prove themselves worthy of it. The letter outlined specific conditions that no one had known about, not even Emily's own family. The fortune, it seemed, was tied to the mansion in more ways than John had ever imagined. Emily had known about the trust, but she had kept it from everyone, even John. The shock of the discovery hit him like a wave. Could this be the answer he was looking for? Was this the proof he needed to defend his claim to the mansion? John's mind raced as he processed the letter's contents. He had always known Emily was a woman of mystery, but this was something he hadn't expected. She had left him not just the house, but a legacy that no one had been aware of, except for her family. With the letter in his hand, John knew he had to act quickly. Emily's family would stop at nothing to take the mansion, and this letter could be his only leverage. But the more he thought about it, the more questions arose. Why had Emily kept this from him? And why had her family never mentioned the trust before? Was there something more to this story than he knew? Duke let out a low growl, pulling John from his thoughts. He looked over at the dog, whose amber eyes were fixed on something near the window. John followed his gaze, but there was nothing there. Still, the air felt thick with tension. He couldn't shake the feeling that Emily's family was closer than he thought, that they knew more about this hidden trust than they were letting on. As the days passed, the tension grew. John kept the letter hidden, not trusting anyone, not even his closest friends, with its contents. Emily's family had not yet returned, but John knew they would. And when they did, he would be ready. He had no intention of losing the mansion. He would fight for it. For Emily, for himself, and for the life they had once dreamed of. But the question remained, would this letter be enough to keep the mansion in his hands? Or would Emily's family find a way to take it from him, just as they had taken everything else? As John sat by the fireplace that evening, Duke curled up at his feet, he knew one thing for certain. His battle for the mansion had only just begun. The days after John discovered Emily's secret letter were filled with a tense, almost suffocating silence. He had carefully hidden the letter, knowing that it was his only leverage in the battle for the mansion. But as much as the letter gave him hope, it also raised new questions. Why had Emily kept such a monumental secret? And why had her family never mentioned the trust before? The mansion, which had once felt like a place of warmth and memory, now felt like a battlefield. Every creak of the old floorboards seemed to echo the mounting pressure. Duke, always by his side, sensed the change in the air, his ears constantly twitching at every sound. John had grown accustomed to the quiet. But now, every moment of silence only seemed to amplify the tension. As the days dragged on, John decided it was time to learn more about the trust. He couldn't rely on just the letter. He needed solid proof that Emily's family would have no claim to the mansion. So, one evening, after another long day of waiting, John ventured into the basement of the mansion. The room smelled of dust and aged wood, a faint musty odor that reminded him of the past. He had never explored the basement much, but tonight felt different. Tonight, he had to uncover the truth. The flickering light of a single bulb cast long shadows across the concrete floor as John stepped carefully through the maze of old furniture and forgotten boxes. It was in the farthest corner that he found a chest, hidden behind a stack of boxes filled with old photographs and papers. His heart raced as he knelt to open it. Inside, he found a collection of old, leather-bound books and papers, most of them discolored with age. As he flipped through them, he found something that made his breath catch in his throat, a ledger. It was carefully written, with names and dates going back decades. The ledger was filled with records of the mansion, as well as cryptic notes about the trust that Emily's mother had left behind. It seemed to contain details of the family's financial dealings, but, more importantly, it confirmed the existence of the trust and its connection to the mansion. This was the missing piece John needed. As he scanned the pages, he realized that the mansion had been a part of this family's legacy, a legacy that had been passed down through generations. But Emily's mother had made it clear in her will that only those who truly understood the value of the mansion, beyond its material wealth, would be worthy of its inheritance. John's heart pounded as he processed the information. He had always known that Emily was more than just a woman who loved him. She was someone who had always been tied to something much bigger, something with deep roots in her family's history. The mansion was more than just a house. It was a symbol of the family's legacy, a legacy that had been preserved through centuries. But it was also a gift, one that Emily had given to John, and one that he now had to protect. Just as he was about to put the ledger back in the chest, Duke suddenly growled, a deep rumble that sent a shiver down John's spine. John turned, but saw nothing in the shadows. He felt a chill run through him. For a moment, it was as if the house itself was watching him. The air felt thick, charged with something he couldn't explain. Duke's growl deepened, and John instinctively reached for the flashlight he had placed on the floor earlier. He scanned the dark corners of the basement, his pulse quickening. But there was nothing there, just the familiar dust and shadows. Still, the feeling lingered. John could sense that something was coming, something that would challenge everything he had fought for. Emily's family would not give up easily. They would come for the mansion, and when they did, John had to be ready. He had to make sure the trust was his to claim, and with it, the future of the mansion that held the memories of his life with Emily. But as John stood there, holding the ledger in his hands, he realized that the battle for the mansion was about more than just property. It was about love, legacy, and the promise he had made to Emily. The mansion wasn't just a house. It was a testament to their life together, and he would fight to keep it, no matter the cost. John stood alone in the basement, the weight of the ledger heavy in his hands. The dim light of the flashlight cast long shadows on the walls, making the air feel even colder than it already was. He had uncovered something far more powerful than he had anticipated, a family legacy that had been hidden for generations, and yet, there was a nagging feeling that he wasn't the only one aware of it. As he carefully placed the ledger back in the chest, Duke let out another low growl, his eyes scanning the darkness with an intensity that made John uneasy. "Easy, boy," John muttered, his voice steady but his heart pounding in his chest. Something wasn't right. He could feel it deep in his bones. Duke's growl persisted, and John's gaze followed his dog's, landing on a dark corner of the basement. There was nothing there, of course, but the unease lingered like a storm waiting to break. John shook his head, trying to shake off the sensation. The ledger, it was all too much, too fast. His thoughts were racing, and he had to steady himself. He had come so far, and he wasn't about to let his doubts stop him now. The mansion was his home, and he wasn't going to give it up without a fight. As John ascended the basement stairs, the feeling of being watched didn't fade. Every creak of the stairs beneath his feet felt amplified, as if the house itself was conspiring against him. He reached the top, and for a brief moment, the stillness of the mansion enveloped him. The house was eerily quiet, too quiet. He glanced at the old grandfather clock in the hallway. It had been broken for years, but somehow, its pendulum was swinging gently. It shouldn't be moving. The thought sent a chill down John's spine. He wasn't alone here. He could feel it. Suddenly, the sound of the doorbell broke the silence. John froze, his heart racing. Who could it be at this hour? His hand instinctively went to the gun he kept in the drawer by the entryway, just in case. But he wasn't expecting trouble. He was expecting them. Emily's family. He knew they wouldn't let him keep the mansion without a fight. John cautiously approached the door, his mind racing. When he opened it, he wasn't surprised to see Thomas, Emily's father, standing there, with a stern expression on his face. Behind him stood Daniel and Michael, both wearing the same cold, calculating look that had been etched in their faces since John first met them. "John," Thomas said, his voice hard as ever. "We need to talk." John didn't invite them in. "What's this about?" he asked, keeping his tone steady. "We've had enough of your games," Thomas replied, his eyes narrowing. "This mansion belongs to the family, not to you. You've had your time, but now it's over. You need to leave." John stood tall, his chest swelling with defiance. "I'm not leaving," he said firmly. "This is my home now. Emily left it to me, and I'm not going to let you take it." "You think Emily's wishes mean anything now?" Daniel sneered, stepping forward. "She's dead, and we're the ones who should have the mansion, not some outsider who's barely even part of the family." "She loved me," John shot back, his voice low but filled with emotion. "And this house is mine. You don't get to come in here and take it just because you think you can." Michael stepped forward, a smirk on his face. "You're fighting a losing battle, John. We've already got the law on our side. And when we're done with you, you'll be out on the streets, with nothing." John's jaw clenched. He wasn't about to let them bully him into submission. He had Emily's letter, the ledger, the proof of her intentions. He would fight for what was rightfully his. But as he stood there, facing her family, something shifted in the air. The quiet was growing oppressive again. Duke, standing by John's side, suddenly growled louder, his body tense. He was looking past Emily's family, into the darkened hallway behind them. John glanced over his shoulder, his heart sinking. In the dim light, he thought he saw a figure standing just beyond the doorway. His breath caught in his throat. He turned back to face the family, but they hadn't noticed the strange presence. "What's going on?" John asked, his voice tight. "Who's there?" Thomas, Daniel, and Michael all turned, their eyes narrowing. But when they looked back at John, they were just as confused. There was no one there. John felt a cold sweat break out across his forehead. The house was playing tricks on him again. But why? And who? Was the shadow he had seen? His thoughts were interrupted as Thomas took a step forward. "We'll be back," he said, his voice ominous. "And when we come back, you'll be gone." Without another word, he turned and left, with Daniel and Michael following suit. John stood in the doorway, watching them leave, but his mind was elsewhere. The house had just revealed something to him, something he wasn't ready for. Who had been watching him from the hallway? Was it Emily? Or was it something else? The next few days felt like a blur for John. The encounter with Emily's family had left him unsettled, but there was something more to it. The shadow he had seen in the hallway lingered in his thoughts, gnawing at him. Who had been standing there? And why did he feel so certain that someone, or something, had been watching him? John couldn't shake the feeling that the mansion itself was trying to communicate with him, but he couldn't make sense of it. He spent hours walking through the rooms, trying to ignore the unsettling silence, his hand often brushing against the cool wood of the walls as if searching for answers. Duke, his faithful German shepherd, never strayed far from his side, his sharp eyes always on alert, sensing the same tension in the air. One evening, as John sat in the study, the old clock ticking steadily in the background, he decided to go through the documents again. He had read the ledger and Emily's mother's letter over and over, hoping he might have missed something. As he skimmed through the old pages, a small, folded piece of paper fell from between two of the books. His heart skipped a beat. It was a note, written in Emily's handwriting, and it was addressed to him. His hands trembled as he unfolded it. "John," it began, "if you are reading this, then it means the house is no longer just a home to you. It is now your responsibility. I know you're strong, but you may not understand the weight of what I've left behind. The mansion holds more than just memories. It holds a secret, a key to something bigger than any of us could have imagined. If you are ready, you must find it. It's hidden in the walls of this house, where no one can see. Look to the basement, where the legacy begins. Trust Duke. He knows more than you think." The note was brief, but it sent a wave of disbelief and awe through John. What secret could Emily have been talking about? And why had she left him this message in such a cryptic way? He reread the note several times, trying to decipher its meaning. The reference to the basement was clear, but what exactly was hidden there? He couldn't stop the questions from racing in his mind. John knew one thing for certain. Whatever Emily had left him, whatever was hidden in the mansion, it was something important. This wasn't just about fighting for his home anymore. This was about uncovering the truth of Emily's legacy, something deeper than he could have ever imagined. He stood up from the study desk, feeling a new sense of purpose settle in his chest. The mansion was more than just a battle for property. It was the key to understanding Emily's life, her family, and perhaps even the mysterious forces at play here. Duke stood by his side, his ears perked as if he sensed John's resolve. The dog's amber eyes met John's, and for a moment, it felt as though the two of them shared an unspoken understanding. John couldn't do this alone, and he knew Duke was his partner in this journey. Without hesitation, John made his way to the basement. The house was still as ever, but there was a sense of anticipation in the air, as if it too was waiting for the next chapter to unfold. As he reached the basement stairs, he noticed the familiar musty scent of old wood, but tonight it felt different, charged with a strange energy. Duke trotted ahead, his movements precise and deliberate, as if he knew exactly where they needed to go. They made their way deeper into the basement, where the shadows grew longer and the temperature dropped. The low hum of the house was almost deafening now, and John's heartbeat seemed to match the rhythm of the old structure. He reached the far corner of the basement, where the walls were lined with boxes and old furniture. Duke stopped in front of a large wooden cabinet that seemed out of place. The cabinet was ancient, its surface covered in dust, but it was not the dust that drew John's attention. It was the faint markings on the wood, barely visible under. The grime. It almost looked like a map, scratched into the surface. His fingers traced the markings carefully, feeling the grooves in the wood. Suddenly, Duke barked, his tail wagging as he circled the cabinet. John's pulse quickened as he realized what the dog was trying to tell him. This was it. He had found the first clue. John moved the cabinet slightly, revealing a hidden compartment in the wall. His hands shook with anticipation as he reached inside. What he pulled out was a small, intricately carved box, almost like a jewelry box, but far older. The box felt heavier than it should have, and John could sense that it held something important, something that Emily had hidden for a reason. He opened the box carefully, his breath catching in his throat. Inside was a small key, rusted with age but still intact. Alongside the key was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with time. John unfolded it, his eyes scanning the fragile handwriting. To unlock the future, you must first unlock the past. The key will guide you to what lies beneath. John's mind raced as he processed the meaning behind the note. Beneath? What was she talking about? Was there something hidden beneath the house? His grip tightened around the key, and he knew that this was just the beginning. There was much more to uncover, but he felt closer than ever to understanding Emily's secret. As he turned to leave the basement, Duke gave another bark, as if urging him to hurry. The air felt different now, electric with the promise of revelation. John didn't know what lay ahead, but he was ready. Emily had left him a path to follow, and he was determined to find out where it would lead. The key was heavier than John had anticipated, its rusted metal cool against his skin as he held it tightly in his hand. The more he examined it, the more questions filled his mind. What did this key unlock? Was it another part of Emily's secret that she had kept hidden all these years? Duke, as if sensing the weight of the moment, stood by his side, his eyes trained on the key as though he too understood its significance. They both knew this was no ordinary key. It was the key to something much bigger than either of them could comprehend. John's heart raced as he carefully placed the key in his pocket, determined to figure out where it led. His fingers brushed the fragile piece of paper that had come with it, the words written in Emily's handwriting still fresh in his mind. To unlock the future, you must first unlock the past. The key will guide you to what lies beneath. Beneath. John's mind wandered back to the mansion, to the countless hours he had spent walking through the halls, searching for something to make sense of the mystery Emily had left behind. Could there be something beneath the house, hidden from view for generations? He had to know. The house was silent now, as though waiting for him to make the next move. He couldn't shake the feeling that the house itself was watching him, testing him, urging him to find the truth. He had been living here for months, yet it felt as though the mansion had only just begun to reveal its secrets. The mystery of the key and the strange message Emily had left behind was only the beginning. He had to go deeper, physically and emotionally, into the past to understand the present. The next morning, John set out to search for whatever the key might unlock. Duke followed closely, his sharp eyes scanning every corner as if he too was anticipating the discovery of something monumental. They ventured to the back of the mansion, where the garden and overgrown pathways led into a small, hidden grove. The trees there seemed older than the rest of the property, their twisted branches reaching out like silent sentinels. John could feel the air grow colder as they approached, a strange chill creeping down his spine. He couldn't help but feel like something was drawing him to this exact spot, as though Emily herself had guided him here. As they reached the center of the grove, John noticed something odd, a large, flat stone in the ground, its surface worn smooth by time. It was unlike anything else on the property. It looked as though it had been placed deliberately, as though it was meant to conceal something. Duke barked once, his tail stiff, a sign that he had found something of interest. John crouched down and placed his hands on the stone. It felt cool to the touch, almost as if it had been waiting for him to unlock its secret. There at the edge of the stone, John noticed a faint outline, something that had been carved into the surface long ago. With a little effort, he was able to shift the stone just enough to reveal what lay beneath it, a narrow, hidden staircase that spiraled downward into the earth. His heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the opening, realizing that the key Emily had left him was meant for this very moment. He pulled the key from his pocket and examined it again. It was clear now that this was the key to something ancient, something buried beneath the mansion, and whatever lay at the bottom of that staircase would reveal the final piece of the puzzle. He took a deep breath and, with a firm resolve, descended the staircase, Duke following closely behind. The air grew colder the farther they descended, the walls damp with moisture as they moved deeper into the earth. The only sound was the steady rhythm of their footsteps and the occasional shuffle of Duke's paws against the stone. The staircase seemed to go on forever, but eventually, they reached the bottom. John's flashlight flickered as he stepped into the chamber below. It was small, dimly lit, but there was something about it that felt both familiar and otherworldly. The walls of the chamber were lined with old, weathered shelves, some empty, while others contained what appeared to be old books and trinkets, each one covered in a layer of dust. As John's flashlight beam swept across the room, it landed on a large, ornate chest in the corner. The chest was decorated with intricate carvings, and the metal hinges gleamed in the dim light. This was it, the heart of the mansion's secret. With trembling hands, John approached the chest and placed the key into the lock. It turned with a soft click, and the chest creaked open. Inside, there was a small box, no bigger than a shoebox, wrapped in faded cloth. John's pulse quickened as he lifted the box from its resting place. He could feel the weight of it in his hands. Something of immense importance was hidden inside. As he unwrapped the cloth, he found an old photograph, a letter, and a set of keys. The photograph was of Emily, but it wasn't just a typical family photo. She was standing in front of the mansion, but behind her was another figure, someone John didn't recognize. The letter, written in elegant handwriting, explained the history of the mansion and its true legacy. It revealed a secret that Emily had kept hidden for years, an inheritance that had been passed down through the generations, one that tied Emily's family to a vast fortune. But there was a condition. Only the rightful heir, someone who understood the true value of the mansion, could claim it. And the keys, John realized, were not just for the mansion. They were the keys to a much bigger fortune, one that Emily had protected all along. As John read the letter, the full scope of what Emily had left him became clear. This was more than just a house. It was a treasure trove of history, love, and legacy. And now, it was his responsibility to protect it. But the discovery didn't bring him peace. Instead, it brought more questions. Why had Emily kept this from him? Why hadn't she told him the truth about her family's legacy? And, most importantly, how far would her family go to take what they believed was rightfully theirs? John stared down at the photograph, the letter, and the keys in his hands, each piece carrying more weight than he had ever imagined. The photograph showed Emily, but there was something about it that felt off. Another figure stood behind her, a tall man with a strong, almost regal posture. His face was partially obscured, but the way he stood made it clear that he was someone of importance, someone John needed to know more about. The letter was even more cryptic. It spoke of Emily's family legacy, a fortune passed down through generations, and how only someone truly worthy could claim it. But it didn't tell him why Emily had kept this secret from him, nor did it reveal the full extent of her family's power. The keys in his hands seemed to represent the unlocking of not just the mansion, but something much larger, something tied to Emily's bloodline. The mystery had deepened, and John knew he had to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. He couldn't afford to let Emily's family get to it first. As he carefully folded the letter and placed it back in the chest, he made a decision. He would confront Emily's family, but not just about the mansion. He would confront them about the legacy, about the fortune, and about the man in the photograph. What if this wasn't just about property? What if it was about something more? John stood up, taking a deep breath as he looked around the room. The mansion had never felt more like a labyrinth of secrets. He couldn't do this alone. He needed help. But who could he trust? He thought of Lena, a woman he had met once before, who worked for the local park service. She had an inquisitive nature and a sharp mind. Maybe she could help him dig deeper into Emily's family history. Maybe she had information that could connect the dots. He had never mentioned anything to her about the mansion or the family's inheritance, but now he realized she might be the key to unlocking the mystery. After all, Lena had been the one who first told him about the Avalon Bell Works, the strange project from the past that seemed to tie into everything going on in the mansion. John reached for his phone and dialed her number. "Lena," he said when she picked up. "It's John. I need your help. There's something about my wife's family, something I didn't know, and I think you might be able to help me find the truth." Lena's voice was steady and curious. "What's going on, John?" "I found something," he replied, his voice tight with urgency. "A legacy. A fortune that's been passed down through generations in my wife's family. But there's a catch. It's hidden. And I need to know more about it. I think it's tied to the mansion, to the house itself, and to something that happened a long time ago. Can you help me figure it out?" There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "I'm listening," Lena said. "What exactly are we looking for?" John took a deep breath and explained everything. The letter, the keys, the photograph, and the strange sense of being watched that he couldn't shake. He also mentioned the man in the photo, the figure who seemed to be at the heart of the mystery. I think he's connected to Emily's family, John said. Maybe he's the key to everything. But I need someone who can help me track down his identity. Someone who knows how to dig into the past without drawing too much attention. Lena was quiet for a moment, thinking. I might have some contacts, she said finally. I can help you research this, but we need to be careful. If Emily's family is involved, they won't stop at anything to protect what they think is theirs. You're right to be cautious. John nodded, even though she couldn't see him. He felt a sense of relief that Lena was willing to help. For the first time since Emily's death, he didn't feel completely alone in this battle. I knew I could count on you, John said, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. Let's meet tomorrow and start looking into this. The sooner we find out what's going on, the better. Agreed, Lena said. I'll bring everything I can to the table. As John ended the call, he glanced around the room, his mind racing. Tomorrow would be a new step forward, a new chapter in the mystery that had consumed his life since Emily's passing. But as he turned to leave the study, he paused. From the corner of his eye, he saw something, a shadow, flickering just beyond the doorway. Duke, who had been quietly lying at his feet, immediately stood up, his body tense, eyes locked on the same spot. John's heart skipped a beat. He walked toward the door, his hand instinctively reaching for the flashlight in his pocket. As he stepped out into the hallway, he turned and looked around. There was nothing there, just the usual shadows cast by the dim light of the house. But the feeling of being watched didn't go away. It was as if the house itself was keeping secrets, secrets that weren't ready to be uncovered. The unease returned in full force, but John knew he couldn't stop now. There was too much at stake, too many unanswered questions. As he made his way to the front door, his mind drifted to Emily. She had always been the one who understood the mansion, the one who had loved it even when its secrets were hidden from view. He could almost feel her presence with him, guiding him, urging him to continue. With one last glance at the mansion, John stepped outside into the cool night air, determined to uncover the truth and to protect Emily's legacy, no matter the cost. The next day, John met Lena as planned, at a small cafe on the edge of town. The morning air was cool, a crisp reminder of the fall season settling in. As he walked into the cafe, he spotted Lena sitting by the window, a notebook open in front of her, scanning through papers. She looked up when she saw him, offering a small smile. John, she greeted him warmly. You look like you've had a rough night. He didn't need to say much. Lena had always been perceptive, and she could tell from his expression that he had been up late, thinking about everything he had uncovered. I haven't had much sleep, he admitted as he sat down across from her. The mansion, it feels different now. It's like it's trying to tell me something. It's not just the house, Lena said, her eyes narrowing as she flipped through the papers in front of her. You're dealing with a family legacy, something that's been hidden for years. It's bigger than just the property. John nodded, feeling the weight of her words. I know. Emily's family, there's more to them than meets the eye. They're not just interested in the mansion. They want what's been passed down with it, a fortune that goes back generations. And I'm starting to realize that they'll stop at nothing to get it. Lena's gaze softened, and she placed her hand over his. You're not alone in this, John. We'll figure it out. You have me on your side. Her reassurance was exactly what John needed. He didn't know what the future held, but at that moment, he felt a little less burdened. Thanks, he said, his voice low. I've also found something else, something that might explain more about this family, about the man in the photograph, the one with Emily. Lena raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Go on. John reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the photograph. He placed it on the table, sliding it across to Lena. She studied it closely, her eyes scanning every detail. The man in the photo stood tall, his face partially obscured, but there was a certain strength in his posture that made John feel uneasy. That's not just anyone, Lena said slowly. He looks like someone who had influence, someone with power. This is no ordinary family portrait. That's what I thought, John replied. I believe this man is connected to Emily's family, but he's not mentioned in any of the documents I've found. It's as if he's been erased. From their history, Lena nodded thoughtfully. What if he's the key to everything? What if he's the one who left the family legacy that you're now fighting for? The idea struck John like a lightning bolt. Of course, Emily had mentioned a legacy, but she had never spoken about this man. If this stranger was part of the family's past, perhaps he was the one who had hidden the fortune, who had made the conditions for its inheritance. I need to know who he is, John said, determination in his voice. I need to find out everything about him. Lena gave a small smile, her fingers already reaching for her phone. I'll help you. I know a few people who can help dig up some old records, find out who this man was, and what his connection to Emily's family really is. Thanks, Lena. I don't know what I'd do without you. Lena's expression softened. We'll get to the bottom of this. But you have to be careful, John. Emily's family won't let you have this mansion without a fight, especially if they think you're getting too close to the truth. John's mind raced. He had already seen what they were capable of, the lengths they would go to in order to take what they believed was theirs. But he wasn't going to back down. He had Emily's legacy to protect. And now, with Lena's help, he felt like he had a fighting chance. Over the next few days, Lena worked tirelessly, reaching out to contacts, gathering information, and pulling up old records about Emily's family. Every evening, she would meet with John to update him on her progress. The more they uncovered, the clearer the picture became. The man in the photograph was no ordinary relative. He was an influential figure in the family's history, someone who had disappeared from their story as quickly as he had appeared. John's suspicions were correct. This man had been the one to establish the family's fortune, and he had hidden it in a way that only a select few knew how to access. But there was a twist. According to the records Lena uncovered, the man had been betrayed by his own family, his legacy stolen by the very people who now wanted to take the mansion from John. It's like they've been hiding this from everyone, Lena said one night, her voice tinged with disbelief. This man, this figure from their past, was the key to their wealth, and they've been erasing him from their history. John sat back in his chair, trying to process everything. If they did this to him, what will they do to me? Emily was part of that family, and now I'm the one standing in their way. They won't stop until they've taken everything. Lena met his gaze. But you're not alone, John. We've got the truth on our side now, and we'll use it to protect Emily's legacy. With new information in hand, John knew that the next step was clear. He couldn't just wait for Emily's family to make the next move. He had to act. The legacy was his to protect, and no matter what it took, he would fight for it. And so, with renewed determination, John set out to uncover even more about Emily's family, the man in the photograph, and the fortune that lay hidden beneath the mansion. He wouldn't let them take it without a fight. As John and Lena continued to dig deeper into the mystery of Emily's family, the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in ways he hadn't expected. Every record they uncovered, every piece of information Lena found, painted a clearer picture of the family's dark past. But with each discovery, the tension in the mansion grew. It was as if the walls themselves were closing in on him. The house, which had once felt like a sanctuary, now seemed more like a trap. John couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching him. Every step he took felt like a challenge, like a countdown to something inevitable. He had already seen how far Emily's family was willing to go to claim the mansion, but now he realized they weren't just after the property. They were after the legacy that came with it. They wanted the fortune, and they wouldn't stop until they had it. With the key to Emily's family's hidden legacy in his possession, John felt the weight of responsibility heavier than ever. He couldn't let them have it. He couldn't let them erase Emily's memory and everything she had left behind. But he wasn't alone in this fight. Lena had become his ally in this battle, and together they were unraveling the mystery piece by piece. One evening, as they sat in the study, surrounded by the growing pile of research, John's phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize, but something told him it was important. He answered, his voice steady but with a hint of apprehension. Hello, Mr. Creighton, a voice on the other end said, smooth and calm. I'm afraid it's time for us to talk. John's blood ran cold. It was Thomas, Emily's father. He didn't need to say anything more for John to understand what he meant. The family was coming for him, and this time, they weren't going to back down. What do you want? John asked, his voice firm. You know what we want, Thomas replied, his tone icy. The mansion, the fortune, all of it. It belongs to the family, not you. John's grip tightened on the phone. I don't care what you think you're entitled to. This mansion is mine now. Emily left it to me, and I'm not giving it up. There was a brief pause on the other end, and when Thomas spoke again, his voice was colder than ever. You don't understand, do you? This isn't just about the house. This is about something much bigger. Something that you can't possibly comprehend. John felt a surge of anger. What are you talking about? I think you already know, Thomas said, almost gleeful. You found the letter, haven't you? The key? The legacy? It's all part of something much older, something that's been in our family for generations. But you don't belong here. And we're going to make sure you understand that. John's heart pounded in his chest. It wasn't just about the mansion. It was about the entire legacy. He had stumbled into something far deeper than he had imagined. And now, it seemed that Emily's family would stop at nothing to claim it. You don't scare me, John said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. I won't let you take what's mine. Thomas's laugh echoed through the phone, harsh and mocking. We'll see about that, Mr. Creighton. You've made a mistake, and you'll regret it. The line went dead, and John sat there, staring at the phone in his hand. He could feel the weight of Thomas's words pressing down on him, but he knew one thing. He wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. The battle for the mansion had escalated, and now, it was more than just about property. It was about protecting Emily's legacy. John turned to Lena, who had been silently listening to the conversation from across the room. Her eyes met his, filled with understanding. We knew this was coming, she said quietly. They won't give up easily. I know, John replied, his voice grim. But I won't give in. Not to them. Not to anyone. The weight of what he had to do next settled on his shoulders like a heavy burden. He had to confront Emily's family, not just about the mansion, but about the legacy they were trying to steal. He needed to be ready for whatever they would throw at him. As John looked at the photograph of Emily on the mantel, a new determination burned in his chest. He wasn't fighting just for a house. He was fighting for her memory, for the life they had dreamed of together, and for the future they would never have. The mansion was a symbol of that future, and he would protect it at all costs. Lena's voice broke through his thoughts. What's the plan? We take the fight to them, John said firmly. We uncover everything, every secret they've been hiding. And when we do, we'll make sure they understand that they can't take what's not theirs. Lena nodded, a look of resolve in her eyes. I'm with you, John. Let's make sure they don't win. And so, with the truth in their hands and a shared resolve, they prepared to face Emily's family head-on, knowing that the battle for the mansion was only just beginning. The following days were filled with tension as John and Lena prepared for the inevitable confrontation with Emily's family. They spent countless hours researching every detail they could find, piecing together the history of the mansion and the legacy that Emily had left behind. With each piece of information they uncovered, John felt both empowered and increasingly anxious. Emily's family was relentless, and the threats they had made over the phone loomed over him like a dark cloud. But the more John learned, the more he realized that this wasn't just about the house. It was about power, history, and a hidden fortune that had been buried for generations. Emily's family had manipulated their way into positions of power, hiding the truth and erasing the legacy of the man in the photograph. The figure who, John was beginning to suspect, had been the original architect of the family's fortune. As they sat in the study one night, Lena paused in her research, her eyes narrowing. John, she said, her voice filled with unease. I think I found something important. It's a legal document, but it's different from anything we've seen. John walked over to her side, his heart pounding. She passed him a yellowed piece of paper. The text was faint, but the words were clear. This document, Lena said, appears to be a legal agreement signed by Emily's great-grandfather. It talks about the mansion, but more importantly, it mentions the family fortune. It's tied to the house, but it's not just about inheritance. This document speaks of conditions that must be met to claim the fortune. John felt a chill run down his spine as he read the document. It seemed to confirm everything Emily had hinted at in her letter. The fortune was hidden, and it wasn't just about who had the legal right to the property. The document outlined a series of tests, a way of proving one's worthiness to claim the family's wealth. But there was a catch. Only those with the true spirit of the family could pass the test. It was clear now that Emily had known about these conditions. She had kept it all a secret, perhaps because she didn't want anyone to know how deeply the family's history was tied to this mansion. John looked up at Lena, his mind racing. What kind of tests? What does it mean, the true spirit of the family? Lena looked just as perplexed. I don't know, but it's clear that whoever is meant to inherit the fortune must prove something more than just legal ownership. This could be the key to everything. John sat down, his mind spinning with possibilities. If Emily had known about these tests, if she had kept this secret from him, then it was clear that she had been protecting something far more significant than the mansion itself. The family's legacy, their fortune, and whatever it was that had been hidden beneath the house. But now, the pressure was on him. Emily's family had already made their intentions clear. They would stop at nothing to take what they believed was theirs. And now that John had this document, they would do anything to make sure. He didn't succeed. He had to be prepared. As the night wore on, John and Lena discussed their options. They knew they couldn't confront Emily's family just yet. They had to be strategic, careful. They needed to understand exactly what the test was, what it required, and how they could pass it. The last thing John wanted was to hand over the mansion, but he also knew that this was bigger than he had imagined. Emily's family had played dirty before, and they would do so again. They needed to know what they were up against. Over the next few days, John spent every waking hour studying the document, trying to decipher its meaning. Lena helped him, digging into old family records and speaking with anyone who might have information on the mansion's past. It was exhausting, but they were making progress. As the research continued, John began to uncover more about the tests Emily's great-grandfather had set in place. The tests weren't just about wealth or ownership. They were about character, about proving one's worth through deeds, actions, and intentions. It was about understanding the true spirit of the family, the spirit that had been passed down through generations. The tests, it seemed, had been designed to ensure that only those who truly understood the mansion's value could claim it. It wasn't enough to just want the house or the fortune. One had to embody the principles that had made the family strong. But the more John learned, the more he realized that he was not the only one who wanted to prove himself. Emily's family, led by her father Thomas, had been the ones who originally set the terms. And now, they would do anything to claim what they believed was rightfully theirs. John's only advantage was that he had Emily's letter, the key, and the legacy that had been passed down to him. But the question remained, was he truly worthy of this inheritance? Could he pass the test? And even if he could, would Emily's family allow him to keep it? The stakes were higher than ever, and John knew that the real battle was only just beginning. As he sat in the study, staring at the legal document before him, he made a vow. He would fight for Emily's legacy, for the mansion, and for everything they had dreamed of together. He wouldn't let her family erase it, no matter the cost. The mansion had become more than just a home. It was a symbol of everything he had lost, everything he had gained, and everything he was willing to protect. John wasn't about to let it go without a fight. The days that followed were filled with an overwhelming sense of urgency. John couldn't stop thinking about the tests, the conditions Emily's great-grandfather had set, and what it would take to prove his worth. It was clear now that this wasn't just a matter of legal ownership or family inheritance. It was about something much deeper. The mansion wasn't just a property. It was a living, breathing testament to the family's legacy. The fortune was not meant to be claimed by anyone simply by bloodline or legal right. It was something that had to be earned, and that thought weighed heavily on John. He wasn't just protecting a home. He was protecting Emily's memory, her legacy, and the future that they had dreamed of together. The next day, John and Lena met early in the morning to discuss their next steps. The pressure was mounting, and they both knew they couldn't afford to waste any more time. They had to uncover every detail of the tests that Emily's great-grandfather had left behind. "I've gone through the rest of the records," Lena said, her voice steady but filled with concern. "There's a pattern here. The tests were never meant to be easy. They were designed to challenge one's character, integrity, and spirit. If you're going to pass them, John, you'll need more than just knowledge. You'll need to prove yourself in ways you haven't even considered yet." John listened intently, his mind racing. "So what are the tests? What do I need to do?" Lena looked down at the papers in front of her, then back up at him. "The first test is one of sacrifice. It's about giving up something you hold dear, something that defines you. The second is about loyalty, your willingness to stand by those you care for, even when it seems impossible. The third test, and perhaps the most difficult, is about selflessness. It's about putting others above yourself, even when you stand to lose everything." John absorbed each word carefully. Sacrifice, loyalty, selflessness. These weren't just challenges. They were qualities that defined a person's character. Emily had known about these tests, and now John was going to have to face them. But he wasn't sure if he was ready. "How do I know when I've passed the tests?" he asked, his voice tight with uncertainty. Lena shrugged. "I don't know. The records don't say. But the house itself might tell you. It's always been tied to the family's spirit. The mansion is part of the test. It's watching you, guiding you, just as it did with Emily." The weight of her words sank in. The mansion had never felt more like a living entity to John than it did now. It was more than just walls and rooms. It was a repository of history, a place that held the answers to questions he hadn't even thought to ask. He needed to understand the mansion, its secrets, and how they were connected to Emily's family. And so, over the next several days, John and Lena began to focus on the mansion itself. They explored every room, every hidden corner, searching for clues that might point to the tests. They spent hours in the library, going through old family records and letters, trying to find any mention of the tests or the family's traditions. But the mansion held its secrets tightly. It wasn't until one evening, as the sun was setting and the light outside had taken on a golden hue, that John had a breakthrough. He was in the drawing room, the room where he had first met Emily's family years ago. It was a room filled with memories, both good and bad. As he ran his fingers over the wood of the desk, he noticed something odd, an engraving on the underside of one of the drawers. It was faint, almost worn away by time, but it was there. John carefully examined it, and his breath caught when he realized it was a date. August 12, 1922. Below the date, there was another inscription. "The path to the legacy begins when you face the truth." John's pulse quickened. The words seemed to echo in the quiet of the room, as if the mansion itself was speaking to him. He quickly called Lena over, and together, they examined the engraving. "This is it," Lena said softly. "This is the first clue. The path to the legacy begins when you face the truth." John stared at the engraving, his mind racing. What did it mean? And how did it connect to the tests? Lena's voice broke through his thoughts. "John, this might be the key. We need to find out what this means. If we can solve this, we'll understand how to face the first test." John nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He was closer than ever to understanding what Emily had left behind. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he was determined to find out. He had already lost so much, his wife, his peace of mind, and now, his sense of security. But he wasn't going to lose the mansion, not without a fight. And more than that, he wasn't going to lose the legacy that Emily had entrusted to him. He had to pass the tests. He had to prove that he was worthy of what she had left behind. He wouldn't let her memory be erased, not by Emily's family, not by anyone. He had a purpose now. He had to find the truth, uncover the secrets of the mansion, and protect what was rightfully his. With Lena's help, he would face whatever challenges came his way. The tests had already begun, and John was ready. Ready to sacrifice, ready to stand by those he loved, ready to put others first, and most importantly, ready to face the truth. John stood before the mansion, the weight of everything he had learned pressing heavily on his chest. The mansion that had once been a symbol of comfort, of home, now felt like a battleground. Emily's family had made their intentions clear, and the stakes were higher than ever. He had discovered the secrets of the mansion, the tests left behind by Emily's great-grandfather, and the legacy that was intertwined with every corner of the house. But now it was time to face the ultimate challenge, the final test. He didn't know what it would entail, but he had learned enough to know that he had to give everything he had to prove himself worthy. With the key to the family's fortune in his hand, and the truth of Emily's legacy in his heart, John knew that he couldn't back down. He had come too far. Lena had become an invaluable ally, her sharp mind and determination helping him piece together the mystery of Emily's family. They had uncovered everything they could, every hidden message, every clue, every record. And now, the truth was inescapable. The mansion wasn't just a building. It was a symbol of a legacy, one that Emily had been protecting for generations. The tests were more than just about property or wealth. They were about understanding the true spirit of the family, the sacrifice, the loyalty, the selflessness. And now, John was about to face the final trial. He stood at the front door, his hand resting on the brass handle, ready to confront whatever lay inside. As he pushed the door open, a rush of cold air greeted him, and the mansion seemed to exhale with him. The house was quiet, almost too quiet, as if it too was holding its breath. John stepped inside, and the feeling of being watched returned, only stronger now. He wasn't alone in this fight. The mansion itself was with him. The air felt thick with history, with the weight of Emily's family's past. The grand staircase loomed before him, its banister carved with intricate designs, each step leading him deeper into the heart of the mansion. As he ascended the stairs, his thoughts raced. What would the final test be? How would he prove his worth? Was it enough that he had uncovered the truth, or would the house demand more? At the top of the stairs, John stopped before a door that had always been locked, the door to Emily's study, the one room in the house that had remained off-limits, even to him. The key he had found in the basement seemed to fit perfectly into the lock, and with a deep breath, John turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a room bathed in the soft light of a dying afternoon. The room was exactly as it had been when Emily had left it. Bookshelves lined with volumes of old literature, a desk covered with papers, and the faint scent of lavender lingering in the air. But there, in the center of the room, was something new, a large, ornate mirror, its frame gilded and shining, reflecting the soft glow of the room. John's heart skipped a beat. The mirror was not just a mirror. It was the final test. The moment he stepped into the room, the air shifted, and the door slammed shut behind him. John's pulse quickened. The mansion had sealed him in, and now there was no way out until he faced the test. He approached the mirror cautiously, the reflection of the room warping as he drew closer. The words from Emily's letter echoed in his mind. To unlock the future, you must first unlock the past. He wasn't sure what that meant, but he knew the mirror held the key. As he stood before it, the surface began to ripple, and a voice, soft, but unmistakably familiar, spoke from within the reflection. John. He froze, staring into the mirror. The reflection before him wasn't his own. It was Emily. Her face, warm and familiar, looked back at him with the same loving smile he remembered. But there was something different about her expression now. Emily, he whispered, his voice barely audible. What is this? What's happening? This is the final test. Emily's reflection said gently. The test of truth. The truth that lies within you, and within the house itself. You must face it now, John. The mansion will not give you what you seek unless you understand its purpose. John's heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the image of his wife. I don't understand. What do you mean? The house has always been a symbol of our love, of our bond, but it is also a symbol of the legacy we've built together. To inherit it, you must prove you are worthy of it. You've uncovered the secrets, John. But the final truth is not just about family or fortune. It's about understanding what truly matters, the sacrifices, the loyalty, and the selflessness that bind us together. Emily's reflection smiled softly. You've already passed the first two tests, sacrifice and loyalty. Now, you must prove your selflessness. You must be willing to give up everything, even the mansion, to protect what matters most. John's mind raced. He had already given up so much for this house, for the memory of Emily, and for the future they had dreamed of. But now, the choice was clear. He wasn't just fighting for the mansion. He was fighting for Emily's legacy, for the truth that had been hidden for so long. He took a deep breath, his heart heavy with the decision before him. He looked into the mirror, into Emily's eyes, and said, I will do whatever it takes. I'll protect what you left behind, even if it means losing everything. As soon as the words left his lips, the mirror shimmered, and the room seemed to exhale in relief. The door behind him opened, and John stepped forward, knowing that he had passed the final test. He had unlocked the past, and with it, the future. The mansion was no longer just a place. It was a symbol of his love for Emily, and his commitment to the legacy she had left behind. John knew that no matter what came next, he was ready. The battle was over, and the mansion, and its legacy, were now truly his.